Hello! Welcome! Lovely to see you here. Take a seat, any seat. There's loads of space. Once you get settled, I'm here to tell you why you should play this masterpiece of a game called Outer Wilds, an indie darling, often overlooked by audiences. And, if you were looking for the class why you have to play Outer Worlds, this is the wrong classroom. That's in Lecture Hall 404. Get out. If you've played Outer Wilds, love to have you here. You might want to send this video to one of your friends you're trying to convince to play Outer Wilds. We all know you have that friend. If you haven't played Outer Wilds, you're in the right place. This game is one of those games you want to approach with as little information as you can. Hence, it's tough to get people excited about it because you can't really tell too much about the game. So this is my spoiler-free attempt at convincing you, yes, you, to play it. Spoilers in this video are considered anything not mentioned in the game promotional material, such as the website, store pages, and trailers. Well, the best thing you could do, if you're already convinced, that is close the video, buy Outer Wilds, or play it on Game Pass or PlayStation Plus, I think it's on both, and just go play it. I'll give the short and sweet version of the video. It's truly a gaming experience like no other. You might be one of those people who categorically hate space physics, but trust me, it's more than worth it. The story and the mechanics are unique, the ending is beautiful, and let me repeat, it's like no other game out there. Trust me, I've tried to find a replacement. And I don't mean to brag, but I know my games. Play it for an hour or two before you pass your judgment, okay? So, let's get the basics out of the way. What is Outer Wilds? Outer Wilds is a mystery exploration game where you get to travel a small, but surprisingly big solar system, decoding alien language from an ancient civilization. There are huge mysteries and webs of information for you to untangle while you're learning to survive the dangers of space exploration. You will encounter black holes and tornado planets, enjoy marshmallows, maybe even get yeeted in the sun. And I haven't even mentioned the greatest mysteries of the game. And I will not, because I do consider it a spoiler. Let's just say you want to play the game for at least a solid hour or two before you decide to give it a rest. So, in order to keep this spoiler free, I think the best approach is to talk about some of the aspects of why Outer Wilds is such a unique experience, without the details of the story itself, of course. Let's talk about narrative design. Get ready for some borderline pretentious babble about stories in video games. So if you're not familiar with what narrative design is, it's basically a game story design. Designing a story for a game can be a complex subject. It's not as simple as writing a book or a script for a movie and slapping it on a game. Not that writing books or scripts are simple by any means. You technically can approach game writing like that, but let's put a pin in that. Because games are interactive experiences, story becomes easily a lot more complicated. How does the player's choice affect how the character acts? How does it affect the coding? Does it affect the entire course of the game? If a player can be a good guy or a bad guy, how does it reflect on the game world and NPCs? In addition, players rarely make such black and white choices as good choices and bad choices. How does that affect the big picture? Because of that, in the games industry, there's a discipline called narrative design. Narrative design focuses on how to properly balance writing and game mechanics. They often have dedicated people who meld the two so that it's a cohesive, enjoyable experience. Narrative designers often work together with writers to make sure the overarching story is paced properly, and with game designers to make sure the story reflects within the game's design itself. In small indie productions, narrative design tends to be the game designer's responsibility. I want to quickly point out the difference between story and narrative. People often use these interchangeably, which isn't really correct. For the purposes of this video, story will refer to the series of events that are being described and told. Narrative, on the other hand, means the representation, framing, and angle of a story. So, let's grab that pinned note from earlier. How you technically can write a movie script and slap it on a game. This is a slightly controversial opinion, but hear me out. It's bad video game writing. If you can't experience a game as a movie or a show, it's just not good video game writing. I'm sorry. Now, settle down. I can hear people getting riled up to defend their own favorite game that they'd love to see as a show. Definitely not looking at you, The Last of Us fandom. And I want to note that I'm not saying they're bad stories per se. The stories themselves can be, and often are, great and wonderful to experience. I'm saying there's so much lost potential. When the core of the story is experienced through cutscenes, it loses a little bit of its potency. It's not being used to its fullest narrative potential in the context of video games. As video games are a relatively new form of media, they're still kinda in their baby steps when it comes to storytelling. Because of this, video games rely on previous forms of media in their storytelling techniques. In this case, film, theater, and literacy, to name a few. So many games rely on cutscenes to drive their story forward. But as Marshall McLuhan, a communications theorist, once said, the medium is the message. What this means is that basically any form of media, whether it's a newspaper article, a book, a film, a stage play, has a strength of its own and why one should choose it as the way to deliver your own piece. Ever wondered why musicals work better on stage but don't work the same way on film? Or why a film is worse than the book that it was adapted from? Well, there are obviously multiple reasons, but one of them is that all of them engage with different aspects of your senses when we interact with them. Books rely on the reader's imagination, while films excel in immersing you into the situation as a viewer. You're quite literally in the middle of the action. When you enter a theater, you never really forget that you're in a theater space. You know they're performers and you suspend your disbelief. That's why it's easier to forgive them when they suddenly burst into song and dance. All of these mediums have their sets of rules to communicate different things in, emphasizing their strengths. With this in mind, the strength of video game storytelling is obviously making you interact with said story and world. When the game mechanics and the story are so separate that you could enjoy either of them without the other, you're missing the core of what makes games such a compelling storytelling medium. There's a reason why so many video game movies don't live up to their expectations. The gameplay is still a key part of the entire experience, even when it's disconnected from the story. By the way, if you want the fancy term for all of this, it's called ludonarrative. Games, after all, are such complex systems that not everyone has the novelty of actually delving into ludonarrative. And some big players in the industry don't even want to spend money on exploring such aspects of video games when they have something that already works. I know there are quite a few video game developers out there who think that story is unnecessary, frivolous, easy, and secondary to mechanics. I mean, Tic-Tac-Toe doesn't have a story, but it's a game that has survived centuries. What would a game be without mechanics? In my personal, humble opinion, as games evolve, mechanics become more and more hollow. Many have seen the same mechanics in some shape or form before. They become shallow and need more meaning, and that's where narrative design and ludonarrative come in. The reason why I'm bringing this up is that very few games utilize and explore ludonarrative to its fullest extent. Even to this day, many games don't bring the feeling that it has to be played to actually fully grasp the story. Many games that I play to this day are fun and enjoyable, but it doesn't bring that thought of this had to be a game. I understand why this was a game. I cannot imagine experiencing this game story in any other form. As an example, let's take Breath of the Wild. I know, I have a thing for games with wild in their name. It's also a game that's been awarded for its story and gameplay. In Breath of the Wild, you play as an awakened Link who has lost all memories of the past. You'll learn you're a legendary warrior and that you have the power to defeat the great evil Ganon that is plaguing Hyrule. I've spent way too many hours playing Breath of the Wild and loved every second of it. And I do very much agree that the story and gameplay are absolutely amazing. It was wonderful exploring, discovering, learning. The gorgeous scenery that you see, the wonderful characters that you meet. You get well immersed in this world. And I managed to lose myself more often than not, and it's a perfect game for that. The problem is that the gameplay is not critical to the story. When you relearn memories from your past, it doesn't affect how you explore the world or interact with something. You might find a clue, you might understand the character better from a flashback, you might understand why you should save Zelda. You metaphorically become Link, who fights, explores, and helps the citizens of Hyrule, which is critical to the game experience and this particular story. But it still ends up being a formulaic open world game. In this context, Breath of the Wild doesn't differ that much from Horizon Zero Dawn. Both of them interact with their core story in the same way. Your exploration is separate from the story. You get better weapons, collect materials, kill enemies, and follow quests. But what you learn about the story does not actually impact how you deal with the world. You might understand it better, yes, but it doesn't lead you to approach enemies in a different way. This is where Outer Wilds differs. The way the exploration, the puzzles, and the story of the game intertwine work on another level. What you learn during your exploration informs how you should continue it. There is no such thing as dead ends or unnecessary information. Many games that focus on exploration have these gorgeous scenes where you just get a sense of awe when you first discover them. You gasp as you walk out on a peak in Breath of the Wild when you see Hyrule stretching out before you with the ruins framing the beautiful sun. And they are unforgettable moments. Outer Wilds has these too, but add an emotional story gut punch on top of it all. Outer Wilds is definitely not the only game to have a stellar looter narrative. Papers, Please and Hades also did, just to name a few. But neither of them left me with the yearning that Outer Wilds did. I have rarely ever experienced the pain of, I will never truly experience all of this for the first time ever again. I used to feel that way over games like Breath of the Wild, The Wolf Among Us, and the Ace Attorney series, but Outer Wilds redefined this feeling for me. In Outer Wilds, once you learn the story, you basically learn the solutions to all the puzzles and the game itself. And the story is so hauntingly beautiful, I don't think I'll ever be able to forget it either. It tells a story I haven't heard anywhere else. The complex emotion it explores are just mind-boggling to me. If you've gotten this far in the video and you haven't played Outer Wilds, I have to tell you, I envy you. And you have no idea how much I envy you. The way this game handles all of its components, narrative, visual, audio, the game mechanics, are in a wonderful balance with each other. The music is top-notch. Shout out to Andrew Prahlow. I hope I'm pronouncing it right. I can't listen to the ending song without tearing up because it makes me think of the entire journey of Outer Wilds. They're so intrinsically linked to each other because of it. The power of music. Now, I know I've been raving about this game for like 10 minutes or more, and it might look like I'm claiming Outer Wilds is perfect. It's not, nothing is perfect, but it doesn't change the fact of how much I love this freaking game. Outer Wilds brought a new type of pain to me. As someone who wants to create stories for a living, the gnawing thought of I don't think I'll ever be able to create an experience like this ever during my lifetime is devastating. It's my dream to create unforgettable experiences like this. It truly was a life-changing experience for me. Life-ruining to some extent. In a good way. So, this is my 2 cents. Why you should go and play Outer Wilds. I don't want to make this video any longer than it needs to be, because who wants to watch an hour-long video explaining why you should play a certain game? I also kinda worry that I'll tell too much about the experience the longer I babble, so yeah. If I still didn't convince you to play the game, I hope you play it anyway. Go and have a safe journey, traveler, and I hope you have plenty of marshmallows during your space exploration.